Okay, so we are here in Mississippi, and we are commemorating the 160th anniversary of the Siege of Vicksburg. We are right here at the Vicksburg National Military Museum in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Let's go in the visitor center and check it out and see what's here before we hit the battlefield. If you notice, I'm sporting an American Battlefield Trust shirt. If you haven't become a member, do so. And they also have their video playing here in the background. So make sure you go check out the American Battlefield Trust here on YouTube. Also go check out their site and consider supporting the American Battlefield Trust. You won't be sorry, take it from me. But yeah, so got a pretty cool little museum in here. There's a couple of cool items in the visitor center here in Vicksburg that we want to check out. So these are the two men responsible for everything that's going on here in Vicksburg and this siege. General Ulysses S. Grant and General Pemberton over here to the left. And if you look, they actually have one of Pemberton's swords that he carried during the siege here. And they don't know if this is a sword that was with him the entire time, or it was with him the day he surrendered to Grant, but it is here on display. Then you got mortars, and you've got some depictions of what life was like in the trenches here, or it may have been for the trenches, men that was entrenched here in Vicksburg up under the siege. And then you've got a display on caring for the wounded. A lot of wounded here in Vicksburg, much like other battlefields, including Gettysburg. A lot of the homes was transformed into field hospitals for both men of the blue and gray. And this is a pretty neat depiction of what it may have looked like inside of a home. And then you got some on the camp life here. Just field desk set up, what it may have looked like. Pretty cool. There's a cannonball stuck in a piece of wood. Pretty neat. And then you also have a display here on the United States Color Troops, people who were once enslaved but now are fighting for the Union, and they were also fighting here and took a big part here in the Siege of Vicksburg. And then this is pretty neat. This is something you're not going to see anywhere else, and this is a bomb shelter. An example of one of the bomb shelters that was actually a cave that the people who lived in Vicksburg were taking shelter in. Pretty cool setup, and all of this is original, by the way. Original furnishings from the Civil War era. And this is kind of going to give you an idea of some of the terms that we may say throughout this series and discuss, so you get an idea of exactly what I'm talking about here. This is a redan, and they were designed to offer a projective line of defense. Troops, mounted inside of the walls, they could fire into the flanks of attacking force. This is what a redan looked like. Then the lunette was designed to extend the fortifications out from the main defensive line. And this also, allowed troops to be able to stand up and fire. And then if we say the term redoubt, well, it looks more kind of like a fortification, a square fortification. And it was designed to offer protection to its defenders from an attack from any direction. Even if the main defensive line was broken, the troops in the redoubt could generally, or what was hoping, was that they would be able to fight on. So redoubt, lunette, redan. Now this quote is what's going to describe the importance of Vicksburg, the importance of Vicksburg surrendering, and how much it actually meant and why Vicksburg was so important. Even though it's seldom, overshadowed by Gettysburg, it seldom got the attention that it deserves because of that overshadowing by the Battle of Gettysburg. But in reality, Vicksburg was much more important. Lincoln said this: Vicksburg is the key. The war can never be brought to a close until that key is in our pocket. So that one quote is going to describe the whole situation of why Vicksburg is actually so important and vital to the Union. So this is the original surrender interview monument. This is one of the oldest monuments in the National Park Service. This was originally up under the site, up under the tree where the upright cannon is, but it was taken out because of preservation, because this is one of the oldest monuments, again, in the National Park Service. This was put on the battlefield in 1864, 1 year after the Siege of Vicksburg. And if you'll notice, as one of the park rangers was telling us, there's a lot of damage to this monument. Now that some of it, yes, is from weathering, but a lot of it is from veterans taking souvenirs off the monument itself. And he showed us this. There is actually a piece of a veteran's knife blade stuck in the monument right there. So pretty cool. So here is an original cannon that was here during the battle. This is a U.S. cannon, as you can tell by the stamp here. But on the back of this gun, you have an inscription here. This gun fired 1,900 rounds, and it saw action at Fort Donelson, Shiloh, and here at Vicksburg, also Champion Hill. So pretty neat. And then inscription was written, I guess, in 1863, but that could have just been marking the anniversary of Vicksburg, the date of Vicksburg. But pretty cool to see this. As we come out of the visitor center, I want to show you guys something. If you look across the street here, here's a hotel, and you wonder what the purpose of the American Battlefield Trust and organizations like them are. It is to preserve sites like this that's important to history from becoming a hotel. So pretty neat. Right across the street you have a hotel, and then this preserved site and national park here in Vicksburg. I just had to make that point. That's pretty cool, because that kind of puts into perspective why the American Battlefield Trust is important, why I'm such an avid supporter of those guys. Because, I mean, for a history nerd like me, well, it's pretty cool to see this as opposed to that. So, pretty neat. And then at the front of the visitor center, here's a monument to Ohio, and there's another monument there. We'll check those out later in the series. But I do want to show you something here that I thought was very interesting for Vicksburg, Mississippi, for this battlefield here. One of the things that was really important here, of course, with this being a siege, was artillery and artillery guns. This is important not only to the South, but also to the Union, who were taking siege of this town. And you have all of these artillery cannons right here at the visitor center, displaying a lot of the guns that was in play here in Vicksburg, like this one. This is the Brennan 6-pounder. So there you are. You have a 3-inch ordnance rifle. Very, very well-used gun during the war. You have the famous 12-pounder field howitzer. Probably my favorite cannon of all is this one. Then you got a 24-pound siege gun here, which that's a little bit of a bigger gun. And then you go up to the 9-inch Dahlgren, and this is a shell gun, and this thing is a beast. And then you got a 10-inch siege mortar. Check this thing out. Really cool. Small, but packs a punch. And then you got a 10-inch Columbiad. This is the Rodman, and this thing is absolutely massive. You could see right here how they elevated the gun. And then you move to a 32-pounder gun. This is a Navy rifle and Brook type. Very powerful gun here. Then this is another 32-pounder Navy siege gun. So another 32-pound cannon, but this is a siege gun. And all of these guns are original, but I don't know if they're original to this battlefield. This is a 4.2-inch Parrott siege gun. Probably another one of my favorite cannons during the war, as well as the 24-pounder field howitzer, which is another one of my favorite guns that was used during the war. I love the design of these things. And again, this is a brass cannon, which is the reason why it turns green, as opposed to these who do not. So these brass cannons, well, or bronze, will turn to green tint, which really gives them a cool look. And if you look on the end here, you can see what I'm talking about. So pretty cool. And we're going to kick this off with the words of JD. Guns, guns, guns. Go check out the History Underground if you don't know what I'm talking about. In this case, I guess I should say cannons, cannons, cannons. That's a lot of freaking cannons. So I'm kind of get over the excitement of just getting here and actually seeing a place I've wanted to see for a long time. You right off the bat have a depiction and recreation of what one of these artillery positions here look like, and I'm taking it this is a gun that they do demonstrations on, just to give you an idea of some of the field artillery that was used here in Vicksburg. But this gives you a really good idea of how some of these artillery emplacements were actually set up here, minus the white tarp in the background. But this is pretty neat. But the other thing I thought was neat, if you look down, I mean, just look at this. Imagine this being all dirt. So you can, you'll see photographs of Vicksburg put up during these series here on the channel from here, and you will be shocked, at the sites here, and I know I will be as well. So pretty cool. All right, so we're departing the visitor center, and we're going to head into the battlefield here, the main siege lines here, rather, at Vicksburg. So as you enter the Vicksburg National Military Park, you have this arch here, which is the Memorial Arch. It was constructed in 1917, or it was constructed with funds left over from the 1917 Veterans Reunion, and it's a tribute to both soldiers of the Union and Confederacy who fought here at Vicksburg. And then as you enter, well, I wanted to point this out. This is the memorial statue to Brigadier General Stephen G. Burbridge, who was the commanding officer of the 1st Brigade of 10th Division of the 13th Corps. And this is his depiction here. And he was Colonel 26th Infantry, Kentucky Infantry, August 27, 1861. Brigade General, U.S. Volunteers, June 9, 1862. Promoted to Major General of Volunteers, July 4th, 1864. So he was here during the siege of Vicksburg. So one of the cool things I am seeing here at Vicksburg is, much like Gettysburg, the monuments here are fascinating. This is a monument to the 83rd Infantry of the Ohio Volunteer Infantry. And if you could tell, well, they have a Greyhound there, which is pretty cool. This is the 1st Brigade, 10th Division, the 13th Corps, if I'm reading that right. And I can't get up there because this camera doesn't do it justice, but it's way up a slope. So pretty cool. So as you come up the road here, as you come into the park a little bit, you have John B. Sanborn. He was Colonel with the 4th Minnesota Infantry. He commanded the 7th Division, April the 13th to May the 2nd, 1863. And he was commanding 1st Brigade, 7th Division, 17th Corps here in Vicksburg from May to July the 4th, 1863. So this is a bust of him. And right behind it, you have a towering monument to the men who fought here in Vicksburg with him. So as we walk up, it is a steep incline, man, let me tell you. But as you walk up, it is just an impressive monument. If you come to the side, this is, of course, you see at the bottom here, Colonel of the Regiment, John B. Sanborn. And this is a monument to all of those men here were with him, the 3rd Infantry, 4th Infantry, and they sustained they sustained no casualties during the Battle of Raymond. They had 2 wounded at Jackson. Champions Hill, they had 2 wounded. And then on the assault on May the 22nd, they had 12 killed, 42 wounded. So they lost a total of 54 men. Not a whole lot, but this is a cool monument. And if you look here, Minnesota engraved at the bottom. I always love looking at these monuments. So yeah, there's a monument to Sanborn's Men of Minnesota, and a very cool monument, man. I've got to tell you, the monuments here impress me probably more than the monuments at Gettysburg in some cases. And that's really saying something, because the Gettysburg monuments are some of the most impressive monuments out of any battlefield of any time frame, in my opinion, in America. So this is really saying something when I say that about monuments like this. I mean, this is cool. So as we're driving through here, I just want to stop and show a few of these monuments. Of course, I can't show all of them because you can see just in the background how many there are. There are a ton of monuments here. Like I said, the most I've seen since Gettysburg. But I thought this was really cool with the stacked arms and canteen and cartridge box. This is to the 18th Ohio, up under Colonel Mathis H. Bartleson and Major Fenn Methelm, if I'm even pronouncing that right, of the 2nd Brigade, 7th Division, 17th Corps. And I just thought that was a neat monument to the Ohio men and reminder for the 18th Infantry here. All right, so we have made it to our first stop for the battlefield itself, and the first place we want to highlight in this series. And it's a good one. This is Battery DeGolyer, where we're at now. We're getting into the history in just a minute, tell you just a little bit about it. But I want to show you this view, because if you're thinking about Civil War battle and the siege of Vicksburg, one of the most important sieges during the war, well, you often see the images like this that I'm gonna put up here. You see images like this of the battlefield, and it's hard to wrap your head around. Well, not when you see this. This is the modern look at the siege of Vicksburg battlefield, the trench lines, the entrenchments. And man, I'm gonna tell you what, this is a beautiful sight. Even though during the war it was deadly, but it's just absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. So let's talk about this position and why this position where we are now at Battery DeGolyer was very important. And this is going to be your first stop on the battlefield. So if you look here, you've got several pieces of Union artillery. These are cannons of the Union Army, and at the time of the battle there were 22 guns in this position. Even though there are 20 now, there were 22 here in this position. And this position was important because this Union siege of Vicksburg area and the siege of Vicksburg was successful because of places like this at Battery DeGolyer. The Union Army here concentrated this cannon, and Confederates spread theirs out. So you can imagine right to our front here, Confederate cannons spread out everywhere. And when Confederate cannon fired, many Union guns replied, and they will knock out the enemy guns. Confederate General Pemberton moved his artillery back, and without the threat of enemy shells, Union troops dug into this position, and they dug in towards the Confederate lines, just directly to our front, and they started pounding the Confederate lines straight to our front. Man, this is such an awesome sight. After 47 days of a siege here, the Confederates were forced to surrender. We'll get into that and the specifics of that later. But this is absolutely mind-boggling awesome. This was named for Captain Samuel DeGolyer. He commanded the federal guns here. He was unfortunately killed on May the 25th, 1863, here during the siege of Vicksburg. But this was were his guns. This is where he commanded. And this was basically a straight shot across the battlefield. This is one of the few spots on the battlefield with a clear view of the enemy's defenses. They could see everything the enemy was doing up here. And during the siege, this was true across much of the battlefield as well. And why was that? It's because settlers who had settled this area had cleared and stripped portions of this away from vegetation. And so they cut the trees off, cut all the vegetation off, and they had a straight shot during the siege to the Confederate works. And the Confederate forces cut down any of the remaining trees to build these fortifications. So there's not trees here during the time of the battle. The trees you see now, a lot of them were after. This is pretty cool to be able to see this place in person. Wow. I want to tell you what else. Standing behind one of these guns here at Battery DeGolyer gives you, and that is a perspective of the battlefield. Of course, you got to imagine, like we said earlier, rip all the vegetation away and get a general idea of seeing straight into the Confederate works. But could you imagine having this view behind one of these guns and seeing all of this with no grass, dirt, and just all of this artillery fire going on? All right, so I think episode 1 has been long enough. There's your introduction to the Siege of Vicksburg. Again, the Siege of Vicksburg, much more important than the Battle of Gettysburg, but is often overshadowed by the Battle of Gettysburg because it occurs in July. So, with that being said, let's continue to push forth in this series and talk about why the Siege of Vicksburg was important and show you some very cool sights here from the battlefield. So, from Battery DeGolyer, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, keep preserving history, stay safe, and join me back in Vicksburg.